Again, I am a big fan of being able to use leftover scrap for these type of projects. And the first thing I do is gather up a bunch of that scrap and I rip it into 1-inch strips. And it's not as important to keep the species together as it is to keep the same widths together, because each one of these pieces of wood are going to have different widths. They're all going to be at least 1 inch, but when you're doing your run, you need to make sure that you're using the same piece in that run, if that makes any kind of sense. So first off, I apologize if the sound is not great. I've got a fan going on behind me because it's pretty toasty out here in the garage, but now you can see where I've laid these all out, and because I made sure to stick with the same original board and then cut that up, then it all basically fits up to be pretty close in height all the way across. It's not always the case, but it's close enough, and then we'll run this through a planer after we get it all glued together. That is a lot of glue. Be generous with the glue. So you can see now that we've got all those individual pieces glued up into 2 separate pieces with all sorts of blowout there with the glue, which I'll go back through and just get most of that off, get it down as flush as I can. You'll notice that not all the wood is flush to begin with, but that's okay. One of the reasons I make these about 1 inch thick is because I'm going to come back and take about 1/8 inch off of each side and get those down nice and flush. So I'll go ahead and chip this stuff off and get ready for the planer. Okay, ran these through the planer, squared off the edges just a little bit, just to get that roughly where we want it. I think I will go back with a little bit of wood filler and fill in some of those larger gaps that didn't quite get closed up like I wanted them to. Big knots like this we're going to leave. This is kind of a rustic piece, or at least that's the intent. And as far as why I went with the size that I did, that is basically the sizing instrument that I'm using. So just a little bit bigger than that tomahawk. So we went ahead and got those 2 boards sanded down. It's almost a shame that we're going to put a stain on there, because I think those different species kind of look sharp on there. But that's what we're going to do, is we're going to give it kind of a distressed look after this. Probably put a routed edge on it, start putting some stain and clear coat and some flair. So what I'm going to do now is actually router the back side of this piece. This is going to be the side that goes against the wall as the display is hanging up. Once I have those edges routed out, then I'll just take a old sanding disc like this, fold it in half, and work over those edges so they're nice and smooth. Ran it all the way around. Makes it a little easier to contour. This is one of the parts that's kind of fun. When you put a little bit of heat to it, a little bit of char on there, you can really see how those colors jump out of the wood. But on the back side, the side that's going to be touching the wall, I like to go around and just darken this up a little bit. The stain on the front is going to be different than the stain on the back. At least the look's going to be. So you can do as much as you want on this or as little as you want on this. That turns out pretty cool. I would recommend taking it easy on the heat. You can always put more on, but if you put too much heat, you can really torch that wood and make it really tough to come back from if this starts to delaminate or separate or warp. Anybody watching that's worried about my brand new plastic table, don't worry, it'll be all right. So one of the reasons I like to make these videos is not so much for like an instructional how-to, because, you know, heaven knows there's a ton of people on YouTube that are just, I mean, so talented and so much fun to watch. I really like to make these so the people who I give this stuff to can kind of look back and see how it was made, and I just think it's nice for them to know that I was thinking about them while I was making it. It was a lot of fun. I enjoy it. And it brings us to this stage where you can see this is the back side that we had already burnished a little bit, or burned. What I like to do, it's kind of twofold, is get some of the sawdust off of this, and also just like to rub in the burn a little bit more, move around that coloration just a little bit from the char. So this might be super boring, but bear with me. This is where it helps a little bit if you've done a little bit of sanding, so you're not tearing up your towel. You can use a terry cloth towel. I just use shop towels, but you can see how that is moving that color around a little bit, and also taking off some of the sawdust. This just helps when you're putting the stain on and the clear coat, making sure you have a good bond. You see how much sawdust came off of that? That's even after I brushed it off a little bit outside. So now what I'm going to do, I've got a couple, folded up shop towels on standby. And then this is a stain that I really like, how this comes out. But I actually start on the back side, and I put it on pretty thick on the back side. So again, bear with me on this. Again, there's a ton of tutorials out there that walk you through how to put stain on correctly. This is not one of those videos. This is more of the slather method. Just slather it on there as fast as you can. This also looks really good with just a clear coat. And you can see those different species of wood, different colors. It's a lot of fun to see how that looks when you put just a clear coat on. But that is not what we're doing here. We're kind of going for a weathered look. So now that I've got that good and soaked, I'll take this clean cloth and I just start to kind of wipe off that excess. And it kind of brings out a little bit of that color. You can still see a little bit of that grain. Flip it over and do the finished side. And this one, it's going to be just a little different. I don't cover the whole board. Because I actually want this side to be just a little bit lighter as far as the stain goes. Again, I hope this isn't making you cringe too much. Anybody who is really good at putting on stain and finishes, it's probably just grinding their teeth right now. That's okay. It's fun. Just learn by doing. This is kind of selfish because I like it. I don't know if anybody else is going to like it. But when people kind of give you free rein, you just kind of do what you want. And check your edges. Make sure there wasn't any run over, spill over. And that is stained. So for this display, I'm going to be using a rifleman's tomahawk. And this is what they look like when they come stock. And the first thing I'm going to do is give this a light sanding to take off that varnish and sand that logo off of there. And then we're going to put the torch to it. Got that sanded down, those logos removed. Now we're just going to torch it a little bit. And while that's still good and toasty, it's going to be pretty hot. I like to have a piece of leather or something around that I can use to grab it. I'll do a light sanding on this, and then I just take a blue towel or a cloth or whatever, and I just kind of rub that in. All that char, just kind of rub it in a whole bunch of times. I'm going to come out looking like that. Now that I've got that char kind of rubbed in to the handle there, I'm going to show you how I like to wrap my handles. There's a lot of different ways to do this, depending on if you're using leather or kind of a natural fiber cordage. I think this is, we call this jute cordage. This is just the way I like to do it. So I've got my short piece here, and this basically represents how far down I want this handle to be wrapped. So something like that. And then the other side is the great big long piece. So I just make a little loop right there and put it up towards the top. This might be kind of hard to see, but that just keeps that loop out of the way, and I'll most likely wrap this on the top of the handle. You see the loops up here, come down to the bottom, and then down here I just wrap it over once and then back over itself. And this is probably not going to make for real interesting footage, but you get the gist. And take your time. It doesn't have to be super tight for what we're going to do here in a minute, but it is important to keep those wraps close together. And now we get all the way down to the end. We're getting close to that loop. Take our tape off of there. I like to try to run that cord as close to the metal as I can. And then once I get up here, I will take that stray, put it through the loop like that, and we'll zoom out just a little bit so you can see this. This piece down here is attached to that loop. Might need to put some pliers on that. You'll have to forgive me, that wasn't very good filming. I didn't realize that I had not turned that back on. But the long and the short of it is, you pull this piece down here, it tightens the loop down here and pulls that stray or that last piece, yoink, back underneath here. So it's all concealed. And then you just trim this off. So here we are now with that wrapped handle, but we have all these strays coming off of there, all that fiber sticking off. It's a real easy fix for that. Cleans that up real fast. You don't have to get too crazy with it. And then all these little ones that stick up like this, just come back and nip those off. And that tightens up real nice. Now that we have that jute cord all cleaned up, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a mix of epoxy and then just a little bit of stain just to darken it up just a little bit, and then we're going to paint that on. Experts will tell you it's best to use a Diet Mountain Dew can when you're mixing this all up. Those experts being me. And you don't have to put that mix on there real thick. It's going to soak through and it's going to harden really well. And then come back and do some of that fit and finish we love so much. But this is something you want to have all ready to go when you start, because it does set up pretty quick. And all these little fibers that you see sticking up there, it's not a problem. You can come back and either torch those or cut them off, sand them off. It's pretty easy to do. One nice touch that's really easy to make is just some distressed strapping material that will end up going on the edge. Something like that to kind of make it like it's tying it all together. And then I'll use this specialty hardware, these little brads to sit in there like that. We'll just put adhesive on the back side of this and use these to secure it in there. It's not going to be really anything structural, but it looks kind of cool. And that's all on there. Of all the pieces that are going to go into this going away award, this tomahawk is going to be obviously the biggest. So it's really important to make sure that this squares up from side to side, which is basically 3.5 inches, 3.5 inches. And then everything else is fair game for the plaque, the medals, ribbons, coins, whatever it is that we're going to put on this. But this is just that one important piece because everything else is going to be built off of where this is going to be positioned. And I just like to use, I think these are just like bathrobe hooks. And those will slide under once we've got that in place exactly where we want it. They'll slide under there like that. A lot of people ask why I use these, and the intent is that this is a fully functional tomahawk. So if you wanted to take this off for whatever reason, it's very easy to take off. Okay, we've got that hardware on there. Got the strapping on the side with those decorative pins put in there. We've got our hooks installed. Tomahawk's hanging nice and level there. This is about as far as I want to go with this build before I spray that with a lacquer, because everything else is going to go on top of that. I don't want to put any spray on. So I got the clear coat put onto the backer here. I really like the way those colors turned out. I don't know if the camera does it justice or not, but it looks really sharp. Tomahawks are finished. I wanted to show you a close-up of what this wrap looks like. It's a little different on each one. This is more of a natural, where the other one has the stain in there. The nice thing about the epoxy and that jute cord is it makes a really tough outer layer there. Some of the areas come out a little shinier than you like. You can just put a little bit of sandpaper to that, and it dulls it a little bit, gives it that more rustic look. Just a little bit of boiled linseed oil on the handle. There's also some on the blade. You can see it's kind of shiny. I'll come back and wipe most of that off. But hanging on the back there, looks pretty sharp. Now it's time to add some flair. This might be silly, but one of the things that I like to do when I'm laying out a bunch of different fancy little pieces of flair decoration is I'll actually put blue tape as kind of a perimeter. I know I just need to put everything on the outside of this. That way I don't have the tomahawk in the way when I'm moving stuff around. As I was getting ready to finish putting together these going away gifts, I realized that a lot of the items that had been provided to me to include on the award were not going to fit, at least not fit well onto the backing here. And one of the reasons was because of a lot of the military challenge coins that had been provided to me to add to these gifts. So I called an audible last minute and put together this coin rack on here. And I don't know if you can see this very well, but I just made this piece of wood with put those grooves in here so the coins kind of lean backwards. Small beveled piece, attached it to the back with just a couple pieces of wood. But it turned out really well. So the intent here, as it hangs on the wall, is I can add all their coins in there for a display. And it doesn't get too busy on the back here. And here we have the final product. This was a lot of fun, being able to lay out the material that was provided to me to show just a brief visual representation of these two gentlemen's career. You can see the way that the coin racks turned out. I think that's kind of fun. Putting all the pins on here, the combat patches, the ribbon racks and whatnot, I just left the pins on the back and placed them, put little divots into the wood, drilled out the wood, and then used adhesive to get those to set in there and not move. But it was nice having the pins in there to keep them all aligned. The tomahawks are a traditional gift that this unit has given to their soldiers if they've left the unit or they've retired. It's also kind of a reminder about when the Continental Army required its infantry to have a short sword, a bayonet, or a tomahawk along with their musket. And at the conclusion of that conflict and that war, you usually turned in your short sword or your bayonet as part of the military issue, but most soldiers kept their tomahawks. So the tool or the weapon remains the same, but now to be used for a different purpose. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to put this together for these gentlemen, and I hope they enjoy it, and I hope they find a lot of happiness and peace in their retirement. Thanks for watching.